Nowadays, everyone has these high-end next-gen Android phones. You download the game from the App Store and you can play your games on the go. But the Android gaming landscape was a tad different like 15 years ago. Almost everyone had phones like a Nokia or a Sony Ericsson. And Android was just an upcoming OS. Just as Kickstarter was an upcoming website. And Kickstarter and Android needed both a boost. Enter the OUYA. Simply put, the OUYA was the first Android-based console. I mean, nowadays you can just order any Android-based console on a Chinese site like AliExpress or Temu. Now I got this OUYA console donated. Now I didn't find OUYA on Kickstarter, but I got a OUYA console for my birthday that was purchased from a retail store. I remember back then fondly that I liked the console, mainly because I liked the open source idea. Anyone could develop for the OUYA console, and it had loads of capabilities because it was running on Android. You could run almost any APK on the console. And also the OUYA had its own store, where developers could upload their own games. Now obviously, the landscape has changed a lot. But in this video, I will show you why you should even consider an OUYA for your next purchase. The least that we can do is give this thing a proper wipe, as it's been boxed for over 10 years. Punch in an HDMI cable, as well as the provided power cable. Tap the power button on the top, and I got this blast from the past. Man, this brings back memories. Time to pair up the controller. There are 4 choices to make, and the most important one is the play option. I was surprised that most of the stuff here is still installed, as if I was thrown back to 2013. The rest of the menu consists of the settings under Manage, which are pretty standard. Network, an account, unit info, factory reset, that kind of stuff. You can also see the underlying Android skin clearly here, which is Android 4.1.2. Yes people, this thing is that old, seeing that my own smartphone runs on Android 15 at the moment. Now here's the biggest issue. None of the software starts, because the console needs to connect to the long forgotten OUYA servers, as it displays the message devs.ouya.tv. There's an easy fix for this, as I needed to download just a simple configuration file, which bypassed the need for connecting to those OUYA servers. This properties file needs to be uploaded in the root folder of the OUYA system by connecting it to a computer. I went to connect it to my Wi-Fi to establish the first setting, logged out the existing account that was connected to it, filled in some random crap, and I was kind of surprised. It went and downloaded the final released update for the OUYA system. After a restart, I also needed to update the already installed software. Applying this workaround also made the OUYA store work again. I don't really know the specifics if the provided software from the store ran from another private server, but on the surface, things worked perfect again. The installed games, but also things like TuneIn worked. I can't let you hear any music, because copyright strikes and all, but listening to internet radio worked fine. One of the best things that OUYA can do is run emulators on it. This console already had a NES, SNES, and Mega Drive emulator installed. I reckon I did this back in the day, and the only thing needed was to provide ROMs. I found this old and slow 32GB USB stick to provide those ROMs. This is also the best method. The OUYA has a mere flash memory chip of 8GB installed, with 2GB being used for Android OS. This leaves a mere 6GB for you to work with. Running the games from a large size USB stick is much more convenient. Copying over those so-sad ROMs took way too long, but I was in no rush. Afterwards, I popped in a USB drive into the back of the OUYA. After that, the road was just paved to finally play games. I needed to find the flash drive from the load game menu, which was a breeze, and there were all the NES games to start off with. Games run in a split second, of course, and with this emulator you can also adjust at least the image, as I wasn't satisfied with all these ugly filters anyway. And after playing some games, one thing disgruntled me. The OUYA controller is a decent controller. It has a nice grip and texture. The analog sticks seemed like they would just die from constant abuse, but the D-pad is just completely horrible. It works on the surface, but with fighting games or 2D shoot-em-ups, this thing is unresponsive and slow. It also just feels absolute stiff, as I need to press super hard to get characters moving on screen. The action buttons feel okay. There's a mouse-sensitive cursor zone in the middle, the black part, but I haven't played a game where it needed its use. So next to having the complete retro game catalog in the palm of your hands, what else is the OUYA good for? Well, the OUYA was pretty infamous for having an own store, just like nowadays you have with Steam, Origin, and Epic. You can still download the OUYA software from the store with that workaround installed, but I managed to grab an 80GB file from archive.org. which contained literally all the software ever made for the OUYA. From games to software, it's all there. The catch, however, is to get the software to the OUYA. See, with Android on your smartphone, you can just attach your phone to the PC and drag and drop APK files to it, no sweat. The OUYA, however, is closed, done deal. But some smart people engineered software like this, FilePwn, which is a file manager that you can push to your OUYA device through your network or download it from the OUYA store. I made a folder on the USB stick and transferred the most popular and best rated OUYA games and software to it. I also copied over some PS1 games while I was at it. Again, majorly slow, thanks to this fine quality USB stick. Another thing I wanted to do was to see if I could just replace the OUYA controller for a better Bluetooth controller. Simply put, you can. I have multiple 8-bit DOE controllers, and if you just want to play emulators that require a D-pad, any other Bluetooth controller fares way better. The only problem is that you can't access the OUYA menu, so you need to have an original OUYA controller on hand if you want to select another game or go back to the OUYA main menu. I also tried my 8-bit DOE SM Pro 30, and that worked even better for fighting games, but also PS1 games. Okay, so how good are the intended and specific OUYA made games from when the console was released? You have to keep in mind, many of these games were made by indie developers and fall in the section of mid-range 2013 Android OS games. It has to be your cup of tea. With just a Tegra 3 chip installed, don't expect to be playing the high-end stuff nowadays. A lot of these OUYA games were luckily ported towards other current platforms like Steam, but also just Android OS. There are some real gems here that saw their first light on the OUYA console. But some games are just plain horrible. It's a matter of taste, but playing retro games feels more suited for the OUYA nowadays. The fact that you can play them right off the bat within a matter of seconds is a pure plus. You do have to be a fan of emulation in order to enjoy this, and maybe even cope with a fraction of a millisecond lag if you're a purist. The fact remains, playing 8, 16 and 32-bit games on an HD TV without the need for any image adjusters and its speedy loading time this easy is the OUYA's strongest suit. That was the OUYA, a pretty decent machine. Should you even consider a console like this nowadays? In my opinion, if you're into 8-bit, 16-bit to 30-bit emulation and just don't want to spend that much money on original consoles and just want to play retro games and some exclusive OUYA games on a HD TV, you should highly consider this OUYA as your next purchase, or get it from someone for free. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, a like is highly appreciated, as well as a thumbs up. Even more appreciated is a subscribe. This will keep you notified whenever I release a new video. Again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.